secure handling of the data on your end-of-life electronics is really just as critical as your online, or as some call it, hot data.
Welcome to the RANE Insights podcast. I'm Emily Donahue. Of all the changes, current and future, to the workplace during the global pandemic and associated economic impact, one thing will likely stay a constant, and that is how to dispose of electronics that have become obsolete. Let's say you have to decommission your company's data center, manage an office relocation, or just get rid of that stockpile of old electronics you have sitting in the IT storage room. What do you need to be aware of when you're disposing of your company's end-of-life electronics? Joining me today to share his insights and talk about the hidden risks of data security and environmental impacts when disposing of your company's old electronics is Paul Kirsch. Paul is CEO of FourthBin, an e-recycling solution provider that provides certified data destruction support to today's top industries by ensuring their e-waste is sustainably and legally recycled. Paul, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
So let's take a quick step back and clarify what we mean by the term e-recycling or e-cycling. I know everyone's heard of e-waste, but what exactly do we mean by e-recycling, and why should we care?
Well, that's a great lead-in question. E-waste is simply short for electronic waste and is fundamentally any asset that's no longer in service that uses or conducts electricity. So that's a very sanitary way to look at it. But the term more typically refers to technology with complex and hazardous components. So the hazardous part is why you should be concerned. And these are components such as servers, desktop computers, laptops, smartphones, tablets, monitors, copiers, and the like, all the electronic equipment that we've become used to in our everyday lives. And with the rapid pace at which technology changes these days, I'm sure everyone feels that they seem to become obsolete almost as soon as you get them. And this simple fact makes electronic waste really the fastest growing waste stream among all waste streams. And in terms of numbers, the World Economic Forum estimates that 50 million tons of e-waste is produced each year, and they expect that to more than double to 120 million tons by 2050.
You did start talking about the environmental impact. You also spoke about data security. I'm going to ask you to take us through those in more detail, but let's start with the data security when it comes to e-recycling.
Yeah, I would love to. Data security, data protection is really one of the most significant risks facing any business today. Businesses hold a lot of individual data on all of us, and that data is also held on the end-of-life electronics. And we've all seen or heard of online high-profile data thefts or losses that companies have experienced in recent years, but you really don't hear a lot about data breaches that happen when companies are retiring old electronics or devices. So really, secure handling of the data on your end-of-life electronics is really just as critical as your online, or as some call it, hot data. And it requires the same kind of discipline and safeguarding as the hot data. And as you may or may not know, when you manually delete data or you simply log out of a mobile device application, that does not erase the data from the device. And if you want a hard drive to be successfully deleted, completely deleted, where it's nearly impossible to be recovered, you have to completely overwrite the data using reputable deletion software. And as a relatable example, data on your cell phone can still be recovered after you do a standard factory reset if you've got the right tools to recover it with. So ensuring secure data destruction of your old electronics will prevent you and your company from being vulnerable to many of the unintended releases of sensitive data and identity theft. And I guess as an advertisement with over a decade of experience and zero data breaches, our very simple motto at FourthBin is no data left behind.
Let's talk about the other challenge, which is the significant challenge as well, and that is environmental impact. Inherently, I think we all believe we understand this, but maybe you could take me a little deeper into that.
So I'm with you. I believe that we all inherently understand this as well, but frankly, doing something about it is really a different story. And you may or may not know that electronics contain toxic chemicals that affect nearly every system in the human body. So these include cadmium, lead, nickel, mercury, chromium, and all of these have been banned from landfills to protect the health of our communities and our environment. Yet, even with these known issues, the United Nations reported that 60 to 90% of global e waste is either illegally traded or dumped. And in the US, shockingly, the rate of electronics recycling is still only about 25%. So we all really must do our part to make sure that e waste is responsibly recycled. And I would say a lot is riding on our behaviors around that.
And our behaviors and regulations, I guess, right? What about regulations?
Well, as I noted, almost any product with a circuit board is now banned from landfills and considered hazardous waste. And it seems rather obvious, but it's illegal to dispose of hazardous waste in your home or office garbage bins. It requires special handling. Data security laws, for instance, are also very relevant for e-recycling since, as I mentioned, a lot of personal data can be housed on so many different devices. And in Colorado, for example, they require organizations to establish written data destruction procedures, including procedures to perform due diligence on downstream vendors. So everybody that touches that device and that data after it leaves the company. So the US and other countries are really taking on the growing challenge of e-waste through laws, through regulations, and treaties. And to date, 25 US states have passed e-waste legislation. So certain regulations and legislations can certainly hold companies responsible for improper disposal of their e-waste, which could have serious legal ramifications. And within the last 5 years, several large companies have been fined millions of dollars for alleged improper disposal of electronics. And as my last proof point, a district court in Colorado fined and sentenced jail time for a CEO and a former VP of a recycling company for illegally disposing e-waste and falsely claiming to government officials that e-waste was recycled here in the US.
So, how can a business tell if it is working with a legitimate e-waste recycler?
Yeah, great question, and one that a lot of people are trying to figure out, and we're obviously here to help educate. First and foremost, a good e-waste recycler is going to provide you with certificates of destruction and recycling to show that you, the recycler, have taken the proper steps to process the e-waste. And really, just as important as state and federal regulations, and a real important sign of progress from my perspective, is that many companies today have made corporate social responsibility commitments, so integrating social and environmental goals into their business strategy. And these commitments fundamentally hold companies accountable to themselves, to their shareholders, and to the public. So a lot of folks in very influential positions are now recognizing the tremendous opportunity and really their responsibility they have to have a positive impact on the world. So again, we at Fourth Bin work with over 6,000 of such businesses, and I think together we're having an impact. So we've helped recycle over 8 million pounds of e-waste, which is essentially the equivalent to a reduction of more than 12.5 million pounds of greenhouse gas emissions. And equally important, we've eliminated over 250,000 pounds of toxic metals and lead that would have been headed to our landfills.
There's been so many changes to the way we conduct our work, especially remote working, for instance. Are there any additional trends that you think will impact the way businesses need to think about e-recycling?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, working from home is one of the top workforce trends over the last decade. In fact, there's a report that shows that it's increased over 400% in that period of time. And whether it's driven by business priorities or personal priorities, access to a broader talent pool, or in response to a crisis like the one we're in now, the global pandemic, the trend really shows no sign of slowing down. So we believe it's important for us to provide means to help folks recycle their equipment in a way that sort of supports this new way of life and this growing way of life.
Maybe you have some tips you could share with our listeners who are thinking about how to manage their business's e-recycling needs.
Yeah, I sure do. Under the heading of, creating awareness and education, which is, what we're here to do. And, at the end of the day, make sure that the companies stay safe and we avoid, as I said, any of these products getting into landfills. There's obviously a lot more to it than meets the eye. So if done right, recycling your company's obsolete electronics or a data center dismantling project should take place under a very comprehensive, well-documented, secure approach that's going to prevent any data leaks, and at the end of the day, ensure the equipment disposal is done responsibly and sustainably. So your listeners should clearly understand that not all e-recyclers are the same. This is extremely important because there's a lot of folks out there. If you Google the subject, you will get a multitude of responses, as you will in a lot of cases. But when choosing one to provide these services, you should need to consider the following very seriously. One, the security practices of the company that you're researching. Two, which is exceptionally important, is the certifications that they hold, and not all certifications are created equal. So the one that you want to focus on is really an e-steward certification, because that is difficult to obtain and difficult to hold. The technical expertise of the company. Do they have the type of folks on board that they need to do to process the material that you're giving them? And of course, reliability. What are they doing what they said they were going to do in terms of when they come to the office to pick up the components? How do they treat the components when they're there? And then are you getting your certificates back of destruction and data erasure in a suitable fashion and timely fashion? And at the end of the day, I think the 6 questions that you should ask yourself under the Know Thy Recycler heading is really, how do they ensure the data security? Do they provide the certificate of data erasure? Do they provide end-to-end tracking to ensure that the chain of custody is clear and transparent from the time they take possession of the equipment until it's destroyed? Again, what certifications do they hold? Do they provide detailed reporting to ensure compliance with laws and sustainable recycling practices? And is the recycling done here in the U.S.? So these are 6 key questions that any company looking to responsibly and securely eliminate their data and recycle their old electronic material need to consider.
Well, that was very helpful. I'll make sure that those questions are posted on the RANE website for sure. I want to thank you, Paul, for giving us your expertise this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Paul Kirsch is the CEO of Fourth Bin. Fourth Bin is an e-recycling solution provider and part of the RANE network of companies, the largest and fastest growing network of experts providing access to risk intelligence and expertise across 4 main categories of interconnected risk. You can learn more about RANE at ranenetwork.com. That's one word, RANE, R-A-N-E, network.com. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.